everybody, in this video we're going to talk about how to divide decimals. So the first approach that you can use to divide decimals is similar to the fraction approach that we've used for adding, subtracting, and multiplying decimals. So if I wanted to use the fraction approach, I could say, okay, well, the last place value is my hundredths place value, so I'm going to have 15463 over 100. And I'm dividing this by 47 over 10 because this place value is the tenths place value. And when I divide these fractions, I can divide straight across because 100 divided by 10 simplifies out to 10. So you can either divide straight across if it works out nicely, or you could also use the zigzag method. But in this case, it works nicely to divide straight across. So if I do 15,463 divided by 47, when I do that in my calculator, I get 329. But you could also do this with long division, and that's the way that I would recommend doing it with your students. So if I have 329 divided by 10, well, 300 divided by 10 is 30, 20 divided by 10 is 2, and 9 divided by 10 is 9/10. And so that would give me the answer, which is 32.9. And if we check this to see if this is reasonable, we could say, well, 154 is pretty close to 150, and 4.7 is pretty close to 5, and 150 divided by 5 would be 30. And so this seems like a reasonable answer because it's pretty close to our estimated answer of 30. So that's the way that the fraction approach works. And the next approach is based on the idea of the equal factors mental math strategy. So if we were to do 12 divided by 2, so not involving any decimals or anything, just working with whole numbers, well, 12 divided by 2 equals 6. But if I were to multiply both parts of my division problem by the same number, I would still get the same answer regardless of what I multiplied by. So for example, I could multiply by 4 and get 48 divided by 8, but 48 divided by 8 still equals 6. Or I could multiply by 3 and I get 36 divided by 6 because 12 times 3 is 36 and 2 times 3 is 6. But when you divide, you still get the same answer of 6. Or I could multiply by 10 and I could say, well, 120 divided by 20 is still going to equal the number 6. So this idea is the principle behind the place value approach. So if we had 154.63 divided by 4.7, this would be really difficult to do with long division because the number that I'm dividing by is not a whole number. So the idea of the place value approach is that we're going to multiply both parts of the division by a number that will make it so that we're dividing by a whole number instead of dividing by a decimal. So if I multiplied both of these numbers by 10, I would get 1,546.3 divided by 47. So multiplying by 10 basically moved these decimal places over once, and I only needed to multiply by 10 once because this number is now a whole number. Sometimes if you had multiple decimal places, you may have to multiply by 100 or 1,000 instead of multiplying by 10, so that you move the decimal over multiple times. But in this case, we just need to move it over once. And once you've got your equivalent division problem where you're dividing by a whole number, then you just do long division from there. So you'd say I have 1,005 hundreds, 4 tens, and 6 ones, and then 3 tenths. And if I'm trying to divide that into 47 groups, well, 1,000 can't be split up into 47 groups. Neither can 15 hundredths, but if I have 154 tens, I can divide those up into 47 groups. So 47 is really close to 50, and I know that 50 times 3 equals 150. So I'm guessing that I'll be able to put 3 tens in each of my groups. And if I multiply 47 times 3 in my calculator, I get 141, which means that when I put 3 tens in each of my 47 groups, the number of tens that I have left over are 3 tens and 100, or you could also think of that as 13 tens. And then I also have my 6 ones and my 3 tenths. And so I'll move on and work on my ones column, and I'll say, okay, well, I have 136 ones, and I know that I won't be able to put 3 ones in each group because I just figured out that 3 times 47 is 141, but I should be able to put 2 ones in each of my groups. And so when I do 47 times 2, I get 94. And when I subtract that, I'm left with 2 and 4. So I'm left with 42 ones. And I'm going to take those 42 ones and convert them into tenths, which means I'll have 420 tenths, as well as the 3 tenths from my problem. So I'll have a total of 423 tenths. And when I do 423 tenths, I'm guessing it will either be 8 or 9. So 8 times 47 would be 376. So 8 will definitely work. 9 times 47 is actually 423 exactly. So it looks like I will not have any remainder here. And when I finish that out, it looks like my answer is 32.9. And sometimes you may need to add on extra place values. Like, for example, if this remainder had not been 0 and it had been some other number, well, you could have taken that remaining number of tenths and split them up into hundredths, and then you would have 0 hundredths from your number. And so you would basically just continue this process, and you can add on however many decimal places you need to, because you can always take whatever leftovers you have and split them up into 10 pieces, which would take you to your next place value. So that's how you divide decimals. If you have any questions, let me know.